why speeches are forgotten by the next day. I mean, we've all done that. We've heard them and forgotten them, and we've probably given them and having them forgotten. I don't limit this to public speaking, meaning you're on a stage with a whole, auditorium full of people. A CEO in front of a board is one example. I mean, presentation skills, because public speaking is like the number one fear. But if you kind of make it more soft and say presentation skills, because we're always presenting. And if there's two people in a room, that's your public. Today, we want it to be as conversational as possible and not this one person up at the top who's the authority and is like speaking down to you. We say an effective speech is a dialogue, not a monologue.
Hello and welcome to Along the Way Life's Journey. I'm your host, Carl Buccellato. If you're like me, you've had many times when you wanted to deliver a message of importance to people. And you were so passionate about it, you wrote down all your text, all your information, and you got up there, and afterwards, they were politely shaking your hand, and you didn't get your message across. Something went wrong. Somewhere along the line, you didn't deliver the message you wanted to deliver. Well, my friend who's on this show today, Robert Begley, has an answer to all of that. He is an author of a brand new book, and the book's called Voices of Reason. And you want to find out why. Robert, welcome to our show.
Thank you so much, Carl. What a nice intro, because you are pinning an issue, a problem that so many speakers have challenged, faced throughout their lives. And you know what? Some of them don't even know it. Some of them, a lot of them,
that's the worst part.
They think they're better than they are. They're absolutely certain their message landed. Yeah. And then they don't see that everyone in the background knows all the baseball scores while their speech is winding up. But seriously, it is an issue. Most speeches are forgotten by the next day. And especially when we have serious messages, Carl, especially this subtitle, important for your audience, Lessons for Liberty's Leaders. So Voices of Reason, we'll go into the analysis of the book, but getting that message of liberty to stick, that's the thing, that's the missing ingredient for too long in the culture. And I think it's interesting, you might like this. I often quote Greg Gutfeld, the late night guy, and he says, the left are great at selling bad ideas, and the right are bad at selling good ideas.
Selling good ideas. Absolutely.
So today we're going to fix that, okay? At least we're going to take some steps.
Let's hope so, because this world needs it. The country needs it. And I know after looking over some of your early releases to me about this book, you're going to highlight some wonderful speeches by great notable people who we all know.
Yes.
But they were just people just like us. They put on their trousers one leg at a time, and they learned certain lessons. And you're going to help us with that.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I could take you back in time. I'm 9 years old, Sacred Heart School in the Bronx, and I'm sitting in classroom, and I hear, give me liberty or give me death. And forever, my life has changed. The impact of those words, not just the words, the way they would deliver it. Give me liberty or give me death. That's liberty or death. He plunges the knife into Patrick Henry. Just shook me as a kid. And I said, I want to be able to do that someday. Then a couple of years later, Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, I hear about that in 268 words. He's able to have this message echo for generations. And so I thought, wow, this is great. And then I tried it, and I would stumble, and I would forget, and I would want to, quote, command the stage as a teenager, and it didn't work. And have you had that, Carl, where you have this great ambition?
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
This great ambition and desire.
Not only as a teenager, but now as well.
But yes, so Patrick Henry, Abraham Lincoln, when it came my turn to writing a story, I thought I need to go back to those two as a starting point in my own evolution as a speaker, as a a hero worshiper of world-changing speeches. And of course, we have Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream in there. We have Winston Churchill's We Shall Never Surrender. We'll fight them on
I
the
love
beaches. I
that.
mean, there's a reason these speeches have lasted for generation upon generation. But then some lesser knowns, Frederick Douglass's Self-Made Men, that's not, you'll see 1,000 biographies of Douglass and they won't cover that that speech. And he delivered it over
Sadly,
the
that was
course of
wonderful.
like 50 years of his
Yeah.
life. So yeah, lesser knowns bringing us right up to the present with Magat Wade, Senegal-born American entrepreneur who speaks about free enterprise as a solution to Africa's issues and giving them the dignity. Like billions and billions of dollars go to foreign aid to Africa, and they're still as poor as they were when we were growing up, you know? And Magat
Right.
is about, she has this amazing TED Talk about that. Just let the entrepreneurs create, and you will see that country. The natural resources are in place. It's the man-made poor decision-making, corruption, and bureaucracy that they face. So these speakers have made impacts in people's lives. And one of my purposes in the book is to analyze them and analyze them through a particular lens, the lens of Aristotle, my favorite philosopher. He has a book called The Rhetoric. And
Let me guess. Ethos, logos, and pathos.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Anyone who reads my book will know those three terms, the pillars.
Anybody who talks to you knows it.
Yeah, true. Yes, the pillars of persuasive speech, because back in Aristotle's day, there was a group called the Sophists, and their goal was to win an argument at all costs. Didn't matter. They just wanted to persuade you, manipulate you, do these things that we've seen some leaders do in recent times. And I cover that in my chapter 6 of the book, particularly having total pathos without ethos. So total emotion driven, but no logic and no moral character. So in fact, let me just take a step back and define each of those. So ethos, ethics is one of the terms that we come from it. So what do we mean by ethics? The moral character of the speaker. Oftentimes in the speaking world, they talk about the credibility of the speaker, which is their experience, their expertise, their education. These are factors, but all of those, Carl, without strong moral character, and you
Correct.
won't trust that speaker nearly to the extent. If you know they have a poor moral character, then their message will likely be lost.
And of
Touch
course,
your
if you
ego.
don't trust them, you won't follow them.
That's right. That's right. Know, like, and trust us is what you want from the stage. You
Right.
want your audience to
That's
know, like,
right.
and trust you so they can buy into your message and you can persuade them to go from here to there. The logos you got perfectly. That's normally the logical structure of a speech, the argument. Does point A lead to point B to point C? And most speeches, that's what the speakers spend 99% of their time on. And it's important, but it's not enough. And then the pathos is that seeing where your audience is and wanting to move them. And Aristotle says people come in, my speaking coach, Darren LaCroix, says, when you're speaking on stage, somebody is in pain. Somebody in the audience is in some kind of pain. You might not have any idea. And your goal is to reach them, okay, to pull them out of that pain and bring them along a path. And that's what Aristotle defines pathos as well. So it's not just emotion, but it's knowing the context of where they are and moving them to a certain position. And so in the book, I analyzed 7 speeches. I used the Magnificent Seven, you know, that reference, right? As the 7 speakers who
They
I
took
cover.
on a big army and they won.
That's right. Yes. And so that's my goal there, is to analyze these speeches through that lens and show how today's leaders in business, in the idea realm, education, how they can benefit from that so that their message becomes sticky. And just a word about sticky, Carl. Actually, let me pause and give you a minute to ask anything on that before I just switch over to.
No, yeah, I'm with you 100%. I think it's important for us to recognize in this culture that we live in
Yes.
that there is a need, a tremendous need for leaders with integrity and ethics to speak their words out to illuminate in other people what has been festering in their head of why. Why don't we have this? Why don't we have that? And if they can illuminate it to what is missing and help them to see a direction to go, we can change the world. We really can change the world.
Yes, absolutely. Because some before us have done so, have done exactly that.
That's right.
You know,
that's right.
So I'll just back up to the point of why speeches are forgotten by the next day. I mean, we've all done that. We've heard them and forgotten them, and we've probably given them and having them forgotten. And by the way, I don't mean I don't limit this to public speaking, meaning you're on a stage with a whole, auditorium full of people. A CEO in front of a board is one example. And you know this, you've been on boards, right?
So first-hand knowledge.
Right. And I mean presentation skills, because public speaking is like the number one fear. But if you kind of make it more soft and say presentation skills, because we're always presenting. And if there's two people in a room, that's your public. That's right. And today we want it to be as conversational as possible and not this one person up at the top who's the authority and is like speaking down to you. We say an effective speech is a dialogue, not a monologue. And so, but why speech is forgotten? Some data on this. 2 books are referred to, Chip Heath and Dan Heath, 2 brothers called Make It Stick. And their point is that oftentimes speakers have what they call the curse of knowledge. We know our subject inside out. And so we use acronyms and buzzwords that just fly right over the head of our audience. And we can't do that. We need to speak in a language they will understand. I'm doing a course for engineers, wonderful engineers, and it's my subtitle is English for Engineers. So they know how to speak to vendors, to other departments without the engineer ease that dominates their speech. And so this curse of knowledge, we need to be aware of that. And that's one reason we need speeches to be more sticky, which comes mostly from storytelling. But then another book, Brain Roll, says our brain tunes out after sitting there, passively sitting, watching talks where speakers drone on and on. Our brains tune out unless we're actively engaged. And one reason the TED Talk has become kind of the gold standard, they limit you to 18 minutes. No longer 2-hour minutes where Lincoln and Douglas debated and audiences would sit there. Like
gone. That's right.
It's amazing that the audience had that ability today in the TikTok generation.
I was just going to say that. Let's relate that time to this time.
Yes.
We have so much information flashing at us every minute, every second, where we've become impatient for the next thing, the next thing, and the next thing. In their day, they had to wait 2 weeks for a newspaper. I mean, there was very little that they had in terms of news. So they would gladly sit and take in as much as they could.
You're right. Especially if the speakers had serious ideas, well delivered, respectful of the audience. And we'll talk more about that with Lincoln's, particularly with Lincoln's speech, which was there to heal a nation. I mean, it was precisely for that reason, was to heal a nation in mourning. So you have those aspects where, okay, now we know some data on why speeches are forgotten. Let's change that around. So we integrate storytelling. We have reflective questions. We pause to give the audience a chance to digest what we're saying. We don't just ram them fact after fact after fact, statistic, and this and that. No, we engage the senses. Okay, we tell us, what was it like in that November afternoon when Lincoln got up? In Pennsylvania, it was probably chilly, right? Yeah. Probably November, absolutely. Pennsylvania chilly. You could just imagine. But we want to put the audience in the position where all of their senses are engaged so that they're prepared for an experience. I often say for one of my mentors, I got this, Mark Brown, I never want to give a lecture. I want to deliver an experience. If I ask you, Carl, which one are you more likely to remember a day, a week, a month, a year from now? An experience or a lecture?
Absolutely. Experience.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely right. I just as an aside, I'm just thinking that I negotiated and put together a conference call this week between a group of people, a company that I'm involved with for some time, with great entrepreneurs, great skill set, great technical capability, building a wonderful company. And they're at an impasse because they don't know how to tell their message. And I put them together with someone who is a specialist in the industry and evaluating and speaking the message out and finding financing when necessary or bringing companies public, because he understands how to listen to raw material, just what you're saying, break it into a place where the listener can understand what's in it for me. What do I get out of this if I pay attention to it and I listen to it? And so the two together, I'm creating a marriage there because I know there's a raw value here and an excellent skill set here, and I'm putting them together. So I agree with everything you're saying.
Thank you, Carl. But you just said an expression that Zig Ziglar famously said, the most famous radio station in the world is WIIMF. Okay.
What's in it for me?
Yeah. What's in it for me? Because when you are sitting in the audience, you don't care, even if it's Abraham Lincoln, you don't care who's on stage as an audience member. What you do care about is how that person's words or actions can benefit you. Okay. So we go there not to be in the presence of someone, but to see how we can benefit from their message. And so audiences, another one of my coaches, Ed Tate, says the thing in the back of their mind, three things. So what? Who cares? What's in it for me? It's all about me. That's what he ends. Right. So we as speakers need to know that's what's going on in our audiences. But oftentimes we got 60 minutes, we got 65 minutes of material that we're going to rush through no matter what, because we spent time writing this stuff down. We got to get it in there. And Les Brown famously says, one of my all-time favorite speaker, he says, it's more about what they need to hear than what you want to say. Okay. Yeah. So you're hearing my emphasis here. Everything is on the audience. They are an active participant in the speaking conversation, the speaking experience, the speaking event. And the reason these Magnificent Seven have stood the test of time is their audiences were all different. They were different kinds of audiences. Patrick Henry's in St. John's Church, which I've gone to. Have you ever gone there? I mean,
yes,
you got the chills, right? You got the chills of knowing what took place. And I always go, as I mentioned this in the book, Edward Carrington, after Henry's speech, he's standing outside listening. He's 17-year-old, and he says, let me be buried at this spot. Okay, 17-year-old colonial soldier, and he was for, 30-something years later. So not only do I go inside to see reenactments, which are just amazing, of Patrick Henry, then I go outside to the grave where this 17-year-old was inspired by so much by Henry's words. George Washington was in the room. 2 arms. He was inspired. 6 of the 7 Virginia signers of the Declaration were in the room when Henry made those words. And here's an example where the delivery is just as impactful. If Henry typed up the speech and handed out the word, or wrote it in calligraphy and handed out the words, the impact would be minimal. Same as Martin Luther King. The spoken word is so immediate. You can go back and read over and over again speeches and content, and that's good. There's value in that. That's one reason I wrote the book. I want people to go over and over again, but to see there live, there's an immediacy. And the other thing is they all have call to actions. Every effective speech has a specific and one call, not 30 different options, one call to action that they push the audience to.
And that's where pathos comes in the strongest, when you speak directly to individuals and you call them to action. I need you, like the great poster in the American wartime. Uncle Sam wants you, not me. He wants you.
Yes.
It's very important.
Absolutely, Carl. I mean, it is. And, we talk about history. I mean, this book, if I could say, it does a few things. It juggles a few things. One is it's a history book. It's a history of the impact of the spoken word on different eras, going back from Aristotle's time all the way up to the present. Then there's philosophy in there. Aristotle, greatest philosopher, who has this rhetoric, ethos, logos, pathos, and I'll use philosophical analysis of the impact. And then it's simply tips, education tips for the current person who has to get up or is afraid to get up. Aristotle's the most important virtue for Aristotle was courage. And a lot of people in positions of importance, I don't like the word power necessarily, but in positions of importance, well-earned CEOs, they fear speaking out. They
fear public speaking.
Okay, two things.
Very true.
Well, that's one of the things my book covers, Carl. I cover several different fears. One in general is public speaking, but another one is speaking freely, saying what's on their mind. So what they do is they censor themselves because they're afraid of repercussions. And the business might lose, the stock value might go down. And that's one reason 2 of the 7 speakers were killed. Okay. They were courageous enough that their message was so important. They said, even if I lose my life, I have to say these words. They didn't want to, but so are you inspired by that kind of courage? I am. I want to be able to say what's on my mind, because silence is never, it's not a practical, it's just not a practical means. When we have a voice, we must use that voice, because
absolutely. Because if we look at history, recent and not so recent history, we see what happens with appeasement, which is shutting up and not speaking out the truth.
Yes.
We see what happened in the United States with this progressive movement that took over so much of our educational system because people didn't want to make waves.
Yes.
I mean, we have to speak out. When we know the truth, we have a responsibility to speak the truth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's where the courage comes in. The aspect that it's more important to not stay silent. And sadly, this is academia. You've had my sweetheart Carrie Ann on talking about why she left academia, and that was basically it. She was the only one.
That was courageous on her part.
Yes,
she was a courageous woman.
She would speak out, and the other at faculty meetings, and at least 3 of the other professors would come up to her and say, "I agree with you, but I don't have the nerve to say it." And Carrie Ann's like, "Well, thank you for hanging me out to dry." That's one. And of course, once she leaves, the other ones they just got crushed, immediately thereafter. That's an extreme example. Academia, which is where it was at its height, particularly 2, 3, 4 years ago. I mean, it was a bad time to be speaking out. But I talk about James Damore in the book, the Google guy. All he did was he filled out a questionnaire. And he didn't stay silent. It cost him his job. Okay. I talk about, Edward Snowden, same thing. U.S. surveillance, speaks out as a fugitive to this day. And then even going back in history, we have Socrates or Galileo, who refused to stay silent and paid a price for it. So those are heroic gestures that we in our time, if we want to preserve and save our culture, our country, our beautiful country, we need to speak up.
Right. And everything in the country these days is moving more and more to the awareness of patriotism and what patriotism means. The individual speaking truth, the individual standing for something that has been tried and true. We're coming on the 250th birthday in this country.
Yes.
A birth of a nation that was unlike any ever in history.
Yeah.
Based on so many scholarly thinkers. It's our time to speak and to continue to speak the truth. Because, so many people say freedom is not free. You're only one generation away from losing it.
That was Ronald Reagan said that one, and
we must speak out.
We've seen it. We've seen it over time. through the course of our lifetimes, we've just seen some levels of freedoms just being completely run over. Others are still there, and hopefully we can recover that. And that's one of my purposes in the book, is to show the American dream, because I have a lot of examples of foreigners who came to the United States, escaped their tyrannies, came to the United States, and they want to tell their story, because
Absolutely.
Americans need to hear someone who's getting beaten and tortured in Venezuela because he is an accountant and the country's offering him $1.5 million to embezzle money. And he says, no, I won't. He tells me other people said yes, but his name is Jose Mora. He says, I need to live up to my name of being moral. And I'm like, well done, Jose. You are in my heroes list forever. He's just right there. And Feng Shou is the other one. Stood 20 feet from the tanks in Tiananmen back in 1989. And he told me he wrote out in Mandarin the Declaration and the U.S. Constitution. He wrote documents, translating them for his students. Sadly, many of them were killed. I wouldn't even say lost their lives. They were killed. And now China's trying to erase that. They're trying to erase. So it's an American story.
Unfortunately, dictators always try to erase history.
Yes.
Okay, but ladies and gentlemen, we can go on like this for days and days. You don't know Robert and I, when we get together, we just talk and talk, but it's all great stuff. That's why we talk so much about it. But we're going to get back to his book, because the book, I think, is a blueprint for people to understand why speeches have to be created and presentations have to be created in a certain way, formats to follow. And it's when you want to learn how to cook a special dish for your loved one, you get a recipe and you follow the recipe and it comes out the right way. Well, if you want to deliver something meaningful, you're going to need his recipe. He's got a recipe on tips to follow that would make it right. Continue. I'm going to shut up.
Oh, okay. So what are tips? Well, as we said earlier, everything depends on your audience. I had given speeches on top of mountains overlooking West Point Military Academy in beautiful fall foliage in New York State. And that has a different purpose than if you were with that group in front of a boardroom, earlier this week, trying to come up with some kind of solution to their current business issues. So everything depends on the context of what your audience is, what your purpose is, how much time you have. But have a main message. That's where we start. What is your main message? And then we work everything around that. And we stay on track with that message. We don't try to overwhelm the audience with 9,000 irrelevant either facts or opinions. You want to stay on track, integrate stories, and every story, including the American story, has an arc. There are characters in it. There's some kind of conflict in it. There's some kind of climax to the conflict. And then there's a conclusion, some kind of resolution and change. So I use 4 C's when I'm coaching on a story. America has that. People have that in their lives. Businesses have it in their organizations. And we try to show that story in a way that is engaging to the audience. And one easy way to think about it is incorporating dialogue. Because when you're telling a story, Carl, and you incorporate dialogue, it brings something in the past to the present. And I say, don't retell a story, relive it. So for instance, I'll put you right on the spot. Carl, first time you saw the words of the Declaration of Independence, did it stop you in your tracks, or was it something that took like 12 or 13 readings? Give me your...
It stopped me in my tracks immediately, because I had already learned the hard way on the streets of Brooklyn that we were living in a nation that was a composite of lots and lots of people, everybody pushing and pulling to get their own way. But my grandfather told me, this is what you have to read to understand the good of the overall, the good of the people. And when I read it and understand what his words meant, because I could see it in the Declaration, that for all of us, we're all equal. We're all entitled to certain rights given to us by God. It was, I never got over that. And I get, I had the good privilege of sharing it with you on the 4th of July, again, when we read the Declaration of Independence online. And each chapter, each section, just you talked about the hair on your arms going up, the chills that you get when you're in the particular. I still get that. Like I'm still a young boy again when I read that.
I feel it.
You're right.
I totally feel it, Carl. So let me analyze this. You just told a great story in a few ways. Who are the characters? New York, streets of Brooklyn. Who is that? Everyone. A melting pot. There's this race and that race, and they're going at it, and some are friends, some are not friends. The streets of Brooklyn. Then every good story has some kind of guru, okay? Some kind of hero who swoops down, in this case, your grandfather. Then you say, you incorporate dialogue. He sits me down. Carl, read this. Read these words. We hold these truths to be self-evident. That all men are created equal. Wow. The hair on the back of your head is you don't even have hair on the back of your head, but it's standing up back then as a kid. And you see the importance of America, the greatness of America, and you're transformed to that period. So a good story has those elements. And now your mission, one of the things you do on this podcast is aim to preserve the dignity, the value of the United States of America, the liberty, so that future generations can enjoy what we enjoyed when we were growing up. You mentioned July 4th. Every July 4th, I run an online Zoom-based reading of the Declaration. And as you know, Carl, I have people from all over the world, from India, Africa, China, calling in and reading a paragraph. And it's amazing for us to see other cultures value that, because we're frustrated that young people today in our country don't value that. I often say, I'll ship 30,000 college kids off for like 2 of you on this call today. Just let's make a trade right now. Come on, let's go. And because these immigrants are the ones who want to be here. They're American in spirit. They're not just born here and enjoying all the fruits of their freedom and then trying to do everything that their professors tell them that will undercut that. So, but a good story, which you just told in 30 seconds. Okay, that I put you on the spot. We didn't rehearse this, right? I didn't say, Carl, by the way, let's do at the 30-minute point. Let me ask you. No. This is how we tell stories that stick.
Right.
And you just did a beautiful example of that.
Thank you. So where can people get your book? Now, folks, this show is being recorded the day that President Trump, I almost said President Truman, show you my age, President Trump is in Alaska with Putin trying to negotiate a peace deal. So by the time you see it, you're going to know the result of that deal and how good a speaker he was. But right now, we're talking about where can we get Robert's book? I'm sure Amazon, but where else?
Yes, it'll be available Amazon. Probably the audiobook I just recorded took me a long time, a lot of hours, pretty frustrating because I'm not a professional reader, but it is my story. And I thought, okay, let me do that. And so it'll be on Kindle, physical book, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, hopefully. And so by the time this airs, September 2nd is the release date that it comes out. And I will be doing book tours. There's already in New York City, I have one event with some business executives who need this message more than anything. I'm ecstatic about that. But Carl, if you know, I'll just ask you, if you know anyone who you think needs to hear this kind of message, please feel free
We'll talk about that offline, because I know a few people that run colleges in America.
Ooh, yes.
And I think this is a message that needs to be delivered in the college level.
Yeah, I think so. And there are a few. Nito Cobain, I mentioned, he runs High Point University in North Carolina. I quote him in the book, and I'm going to send him a copy. There are several people in academia. I'll get it up to Hillsdale College. I think they can benefit. from this because, again,
Absolutely.
if we look at the traditional, even commencement speeches, they're kind of out of time. That single person standing at a lectern and reading notes, that's not a speech anymore. That was for
No.
generations, but there's a barrier. When you're behind a lectern, there's a physical barrier between you and your audience. So I even think commencement speeches are not done. They're not optimized. I'll just put it that way to not come down so hard, because audiences are just not, they're used to seeing a person's full body. This is where the benefit of the TED talk has come. And that's one reason they have the red dot is you're not supposed to walk off of that. So speakers who pace back and forth like a tennis court, going on.
Yeah.
No, but colleges can use that. I think, in fact, there's a student I know who is he's starting his second year at University of Austin, Texas, the new college. And I want to get my book into them because I think colleges are great places because their history departments are not as good. I mean,
they're sending out the young leaders of America.
Yes.
And they're the people who need to know how to deliver a message.
Yes. How to deliver a memorable message, a message that sticks. Because again, the thing that troubles me is when businesses have a great product, but it's forgotten. I mean, you gave a great example earlier that there's raw material out there and it's important, it's helpful. But imagine, I give this analogy when I coach. So effective speeches have three elements, not the logos, ethos, pathos. It is the structure, the content, and delivery. And the structure is the order of the words. So for instance, when someone gets up and says, "Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. What an honor on this glorious day," audiences tune out because they're like, this person's not even original. I say, no, jump in with a speech, open with a story, open with a bang, something that grabs them so they can lean in. Because audiences judge you right away, whether you like it or not, whether we like it or not, and we judge speakers. So the structure is the order of the presentation. The content, most people know that's the logos part that they spend a lot of time on. But the delivery is the point where, again, Patrick Henry is like the greatest example at least in my book. His delivery was unheard of in the past. Just give me liberty or give me death. It's just, that is so memorable. And I liken it, Carl, to pizza guy. You're an Italian like me. You're hungry. You want pizza. You're not in Brooklyn anymore, but down in Florida, there's a good pizza shop. You order it. You see the pizza boy coming. He's a couple steps away. Could even smell it. Guess what? You got your money out? We don't do that.
You begin to salivate already.
You salivate, right? He trips and falls, and the pizza lands upside down. The content inside that box is the same. Poor delivery. Are you going to buy that pizza? Are you going to buy that message that's poorly delivered? No, no. And that's why, for me, emphasizing the importance of a delivery where you have eye contact, you use natural gestures. You don't stand there like a robot. You don't look at your PowerPoint every 5 seconds like it's really the focus. No. Your eye contact with the audience. You're nodding your head. You're getting them. It's that conversation instead of that dialogue instead of the monologue that we mentioned earlier. So delivery is extremely important, but backed by good content and good structure.
Robert, we can go on with this for hours. We're at the end of our time here again, unfortunately. Every time I meet with you, it's like time flies by.
It does.
And when you're 85, I'm not going to meet you anymore, because when you're 84 years old, you can't have your time flying by like that all the time. Anyway.
You got a good 20 more years, Carl. There's medicine. There's stuff.
Let's hope with God's will. Ladies and gentlemen, you can tell today I love this man. You can tell very clearly. I think he's magnificent. But more important, he knows what he's talking about. He's a skillful, artful trainer, deliverer, and speaker. He knows what he's talking about. So I encourage you, get the book, read the book. You go in the show notes. The book, again, is called Voices of Reason, Lessons for Liberty's Leaders. And every one of you out there, if you speak to more than one person in your daytime, you're a liberty leader.
Yes.
Make use of it. Do something about it. Do
That's
something with it. You learn the lesson and put it to good practice. In our show notes, you're going to get all the information of how to reach Robert. You're going to get all the information, click on where to buy the book, all that good stuff. And I'm sure he'll be open to communicate with you. If you have a question, write it into him or contact him. Ladies and gentlemen out there, if you have a place that you have a group of people that would benefit from hearing this from Robert directly, contact him, invite him to come and speak. He's available to you.
Yes.
I don't get much of a commission for doing this. Zero.
I'm in favor of free speech, Carl. I'm in favor of free speech, but I don't speak for free. Okay.
Not for free. I got that. That's why I said I get zero commission.
Yes.
Anyway, but I encourage you. This is a worthwhile project to get involved with. And I tell you, as I tell you every week, you have your own story. We just heard part of Robert's story, and only part of it, because the rest of his story he's told on my other shows before. You know my story. I tell it all the time. But your story is important.
Yes.
It is essential for you to share your wisdom and your story to the people you love. Write it down. Send it into the local newspaper. Send it into the television networks, the news department, because now they're showing more and more real things. Send it out. Because when it's too late, it's too late. And all that wisdom is gone. And the world desperately needs that wisdom. So make sure you write it down. And I'm going to tell you what I tell you every week, every show. I know you get tired of hearing of it, but lots of you write and say you like it. What do I know? I'm this old guy from Brooklyn. I don't know much of anything, but I know this. Get somebody you know today, get them in a big bear hug. Big bear hug. Tell them you love them. Tell them you love them. It may be the only time they hear those words.
Beautiful,
Carl. God loves them, and I know he loves Robert, he loves you, and he loves me. So share your wisdom and share your love. So, Robert, you know what I'm going to do now, right? I love you, brother. I just
love you too, man. I got to come down and see you in person. I promise. Before the year's out, I'm going to come down, see you and Ed.
I got to give you a big bear hug. Come do it. Bye-bye, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed our show. Give us comments. Make sure you write comments. Tell us what you think of it. And contact Robert. Very important. That's it, folks. That's our show. Bye-bye.
Thank you.